Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. If you're new to me, I'm Michelle Quay. I'm a confidence coach, and you are watching the live Wednesday coffee talk show. This is the show where I bring you love, courage, and connection. And I invite guests weekly to come to the show to share their transformational journey that speaks really truly about love, courage, and connection. So today I have a really special guest, and I actually went out and hunt her because I came across her video and I was just crying because it spoke so much about the courage that you need to have as someone who has a good drive for the passion that she believed that is true, and she has a lot of love for the world. So today I have Janna Willoughby-Lohr. She is an artist, poet, musician, and entrepreneur based in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. Well, home state. Her company, Papercraft Miracles, specializes in crafting paper, art, and gifts that brings meaning to people's lives. Janna founded Papercraft Miracles while still in college in 2003 and has been building a brand since then. She was awarded with a $25,000 Ignite Buffalo Small Business Grant in 2018 and was named 40 under 40 for Stationery and Gifts from Stationery Trends Magazine in 2019. Her company has worked with major brands such as Twitter and Capital One, and recently completed a huge project making 500,000 plantable seed bombs for a collaboration with Kemp.com and Lowe's for their grand garden giveaway event. Her bio is extensive, and she also has a big heart for entrepreneurship, for giving to the world. She's also the board member of National Association of Women's Business Owner. I don't want to take up too much time from her because I really want you to meet her. So here we come, Janna. Hi, Janna.
What's up? How are you?
Oh my God. I'm like, I can't stop feeling so impressed about your bio and everything that you do. I really, that day when I reached out to you with a message text, I was really crying because I saw so much of your courage, of how you pull through. And right now you're sitting in your office and I can see all the crafting stuff that you have in the background. And I can only imagine, that first night when you decided that you're going to launch your business, what that would felt like.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
My name's Janna Willoughby-Lohr, and I live in Buffalo, New York. And I decided when I went away to college, initially I wanted to be a poet and be a writer. And as soon as I set foot on my college campus, there was just this really intense creative energy there. And I need to do more than that. I need to make stuff. So I started looking into all the different elective classes that they had there. And they had all these really awesome book arts classes. So making hand-bound books and paper making and things like that. So I took as many of those classes as I could get into as a freshman. And at the end of my freshman year, I met with my advisor and I said, these are all the courses I took this year. What major am I working towards? He's like, those are all electives, so nothing. And I was like, well, great. Like, what am I going to do? I kind of wasted an entire year of school. And so luckily I had a great advisor and he said, well, what do you want to do? Just such a good question, And I was like, well, I want to make paper. I want to make books. I want to make art and do poetry and do creative things out into the world. And I don't want to be broke. How do I do that? Because every artist I knew was a starving artist. And I was like, well, I know that that's not my jam. I like food and, shelter and whatnot, and not having insane amounts of debt. So he's like, well, you should do that as your major. And I was like, what are you talking about? Do that as my major? Was that even a thing? And apparently at the school that I went to, they had this major called integrative studies where you could make up your own major and put two things together. So I integrated entrepreneurial business and creative art together as one major. And I did that. And part of my thesis for that was to start an actual business and build a website. And this is way back in like 2003, 2004. So it wasn't really easy to build a website you could shop online with. There was no Shopify or Etsy or like Facebook or anything like that. So I built this kind of crappy Angel Fire website that had a couple of tiny pictures. They're like this big because they wouldn't load if they were any bigger than that. But I had this web presence even back then and started collecting emails and getting an email list and things like that. And after I graduated, I came back to Buffalo and tried to make it as a full-time artist immediately, which was not.
Was there Instagram and Facebook back then? Was it?
Everyone was writing on LiveJournal.
And I think if I remember correctly, in 2003 there was so you probably built all the website based on like WordPress, these code that you have to figuring out.
On Angel Fire, I built it on Angel Fire because it was free.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Ads all over the place. It was terrible. It's technically still out there, but don't try to find it.
Yeah. So what was it like to start your own business? I mean, you were still in college, but like you already knew that this is something that you wanted to do. But was there any obstacle that you had to like go through?
Oh my goodness, so many obstacles. I mean, at the time, the Kindle had just come out, like e-bites were just starting to become a thing, and people were writing on LiveJournal, which was a big thing at the time. And so many people were like, what do you mean you want to make journals and you want to make stationery for people to write letters? No one's going to write letters. Everyone's going to write emails. No one's going to get fancy invitations ever again because e-bites are now a thing. No one's ever going to read paper books or write in a journal. It's all. I
can tell you right away that's not true.
It's not true. But at the time, that's where everybody saw it coming. I mean, smartphones were not even a thing then. And so people just saw that the future was all becoming a totally digital place. And I just saw so much sadness in all the ways that people were becoming disconnected from each other. I mean, I'm really lucky that when I went to college, we didn't have smartphones. So we didn't sit around like texting each other with our phones in front of our faces. And we actually had conversations and talked to each other all day and things like that. So I knew the power of really being connected to people in tangible ways. And I was like, I don't care if people think that I'm crazy. I know that when I write a poem in a notebook, it comes out differently than if I were to write it on a computer. And I know that if I write someone a physical letter on a nice piece of paper and I send it to them in the mail, they're going to keep it. And they're going to be like, wow, I feel that love in a way that you don't feel the love when you're going to email. Like, it's not the same. It's just not the same. So I just continued on, even though people told me I was crazy. And then it was probably like 2014 or 2015. I'd already worked 2 other jobs as like my day job and ran my business kind of as my fun side gig for a long time. About 12 years I did it. And it was about 2014, 2015 that it started to be cool to carry a journal around and saying like, oh, I'm so sick of everything being digital. It was like the hipster thing to like get a bullet journal or to get some fancy stationery and a really expensive pen and like write letters to people. I mean, it became cool to do that. And the same thing with wedding invitations, especially because people got so sick of getting e-bites for everything. They're like, oh, I want to stand out. I want to do something different. I want something that's real, that's going to symbolize my event. And so people started really going all out and getting super, super fancy, ultra letterpressed 17-piece handmade wedding invitations that have like wax seals on them and stuff like that. And it became this cool thing. And here I was like, oh, I got that. I've been doing that for 15 years already.
And I can tell you, I'm a paper pen person. So like all this year so lately my passion is on happy planner. I'm sure you heard of it. Like I'm like really big on happy planner because I can tear the pages out and it feels good to touch the paper and just take the paper out. So I'm like, no one can ever convince me to go 100% electronic. So I hear you, and it's completely not true. I know a lot of people still look for and shop for planners, and they like that planner feel. It feels real, and you are real. You are real because I think one of the video that you had talked about in your Patreon when you first started out on that website, you were talking about a story about your mom. What was that about?
So while I was in college, I had already picked out my major, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted to implement it because it was my senior year, and I kind of had to sort of figure it out. I had just kind of been taking a lot of the classes that I thought would be cool, and it was at the point where I had to really like refine the thesis project and decide exactly what I was going to do with it. And 3 weeks into my junior year, my mom passed away. And it was this like crazy, wild spiritual experience. The night before, I was sitting on the porch of my dorm, and it hadn't rained in ages. There was a big drought all across the country. And while I was sitting there, it was maybe 11:30 at night, and all of a sudden, like the wind just picked up, and I got goosebumps all over the place, like even on my face. It was really wild. And I ran around the porch of my dorm telling all the people that were sitting outside. I was like, I don't know what kind of energy is out there, but there's something tremendous, and you need to take it in and take as many deep breaths as you can and hold on to it. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's really cool. There's something powerful out there. And people probably thought it was nuts, but whatever. And I just kept walking around the porch like, oh, this is so wild and so crazy. I eventually went to sleep, and my brother called me at like 4 o'clock in the morning to tell me that our mom had died sometime in between 11:30 and midnight. And the sky pretty much opened up and started pouring right around that same time after I was running around the porch. And it rained for 2 weeks and put out all the fires in the country. And I kept thinking after she had died on Friday the 13th, by the way, I just kept thinking about what she would want me to do with my life. And my mom loved to be creative. She loved making collages and rubber stamps and screen printing and making cards and sending letters and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely get my love of books and paper crafting from her for sure. And at the time I was like, well, I just inherited her house with my brother back in Buffalo. I'm going to school 5 states away. I was an instantaneous adult. Like all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm 20 years old and I'm super independent and a homeowner of a house that's falling down. I have no money. And what should I do? Should I keep going to school and doing this crazy major, or should I go home and like be an adult and figure that out? And I knew that she wouldn't want me to give up on the thing that I love. So I stayed in school and managed to make it work. And 4 months after that, I had gone home for the winter break and came back to start the next semester. And I kind of spent a lot of time mentally getting ready and being like, okay, this is my new start. I've dealt with all, as much of the trauma of losing my mom and doing all that. And I was ready to start, the next phase and solidify what I wanted to do with my business. And then my dorm burnt to the ground on her birthday, the day before the new semester was supposed to start. And all of a sudden I was supposed to go to class and I had nowhere to live. I had no stuff. I lost all my journals from my whole entire life, all of my artwork, all of my instruments, all my clothes, all that stuff, everything, toast. There was not one recognizable thing left in my room. And I was like, well, great. Where's the cancer in the bus that's going to hit me? Because I'm waiting to get run over. Like, what else terrible is going to happen to me? And I ended up continuing to go to school because I was like, well, if I could handle losing her and who knows what I'm going to learn from that. And the fire was on my mom's birthday, and she would have been 55. 5 has always been my lucky number. I don't know if you're a little woo-woo, but I'm a little bit woo-woo, especially about numbers and coincidences and like weird shit. And so I knew that somehow that experience was going to give me 2 lucky things. It was like 55, 2 lucky. One was really obvious. It was me and everybody else that was in the fire, because I was in the building when it was on fire. Everyone who was in there got out alive. And I was like, well, obviously that's the big thing. And I kept thinking, what is the other lucky thing that I'm going to learn from this? And a couple of days afterwards, I looked at my roommate and I was like, dude, all of our shit burnt up. And we just started laughing like insane, crazy people, like rolling on the ground, slapping me, just holy shit, I can't believe we're alive. Totally weightless from having no stuff. And my mom loved her stuff. She was very, very sentimental about her things. She collected a lot of stuff. Some people would say that she was a hoarder. We had about 10,000 books in our apartment. I didn't know we had hardwood floors till after she passed away. I'd never seen them before. We had like newspaper and magazine carpets like everywhere. It was a very crazy way to grow up. And in a lot of ways, her things held her back from doing what she wanted to do. Like she couldn't have people over at the house whenever she wanted to because our house was crazy. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it just hit me that it was losing all of my stuff in a fire like that was something I had worried about. Lived growing up in a house that was like that, with my mom, who was a heavy smoker too. And I had thought my whole life, like, what would I do if I lost all my journals and all my poems? That would be the worst thing. And once it actually happened, I was like, no, that actually isn't the worst thing. Like I had based who I thought I was on the poems that I had written. And I thought that was explaining me to myself. And I realized once they were gone that I had no idea who I was. And I got to start all over again, figuring out who I was as a person and where I wanted to go in my life. And what a better way to totally and completely learn the lesson that you don't need any of that stuff to survive. None of it. Like even things you're like, oh, I could never live without that. Yes, you could. You totally could. And it's not even going to be that big a deal. And so that was the other lucky thing, that my mom was teaching me something she did not learn while she was alive. Like, she's like, I could have told you all day that your stuff doesn't matter, but I need to show you that your stuff doesn't matter. And you really only need 5 things to survive. You know, you need food, you need shelter, you need water, you need someone that loves you, and something that drives you. And that's it. You know, if you have more than that, that's all cake. It's extra dessert, you know?
Yeah. I'm having goosebumps because I feel there's a lot of people out there right now and they're struggling with, oh, I lost my job, I lost everything, and I lost, I may not have a place to live. And there's a lot of feeling and fear around, what's next, or what am I going to do next, or how do I get my business started? And here you are, you saw, the fire took away everything. And now you realize you only need the 5 things. And these are the lessons, that valuable lessons that I'm sure you also carry it into your business and how your business has been thriving. How has that impacted your business right now?
Oh, in so many ways. It was really wild. I mean, after all of my stuff burned in the fire, I started, for the classes that I was taking these classes about bookbinding and making artist books, where the form and the design, the materials, the words, the illustrations, how the viewer experiences the book all work together to be one bigger concept or a bigger idea. And I started making all of these books to deal with the fact that I had just gone through all of these crazy traumatic events. And I don't know, when you're dealing with somebody who's grieving, it can be really difficult. It's awkward, it's messy, and you don't know what to say, and you don't know how to be there for them, or you don't know if you're saying the right things, and you're trying to get them to feel better, and it feels yucky. People don't like that, and they tend to avoid people that are grieving. But since I had made all of these artworks that let people experience what I was going through in kind of a distant, tangible way, that they could really feel where I was coming from, and were kind of forced to reflect on things in their own lives and change their own perspective about how they felt about their lives and their parents and their things or whatever. And I just had so many people, after I would show them these books, they'd be like sitting there crying and be like, oh my God, like, where do these come from? This is so different. And this changed me as a person. Like this one moment of looking at this piece of art and interacting with it and interacting with you, I am now different forever. And I really got hooked on how powerful that moment can be, and crafting that moment intentionally and doing that kind of thing on purpose. And having that kind of be my goal for my business was to affect change in people when they interact with the things that I make. And so for years, I just made stuff and put it out in the world. And then pre-COVID, right before COVID, my business was probably 60-70% weddings and events. So obviously, when the world shuts down and there are no more weddings and events, what do? My company had just really started to get some traction. I had a really great assistant who was working with me, and I was like, how am I going to keep her employed, keep myself employed? My husband's company was closed where he worked, so he wasn't even sure he was going to get unemployment at the time. And so I was like, oh shit, like, I'm thrust into the role of breadwinner for my business that's like a luxury wedding and event business. How am I going to keep this going? And I met with this amazing group, this organization called ShiftCo, which is an international organization for conscious companies. Super cool. Check it out, shiftco.org. And one of the things that they did as an exercise to help companies figure out what they were going to do during the pandemic was to do this brainstorming exercise called What If Up. And so many people, when you're spiraling and dealing with something terrible, and you kind of think of what if all the terrible things. But this brainstorming was so inspirational. Like, how can you use the skills you have to give people something that they need right now? And as soon as we started doing this brainstorming, I was like, oh, this is so perfect. I already know what people need right now. Everyone is so disconnected. They're realizing how much they have taken for granted being able to just go see their parents or their grandparents or their friends and hanging out and going to do that. And how many times they went out to eat and stared at their phone the whole time instead of enjoying being face to face with somebody. And they're just suddenly realizing how important people are to them or not important other people are to them and things like that. So it's like, people are really feeling disconnected, and they need something that is safe for them to touch that connects them to those people. And I was like, that's my jam. Like, I want to do that. So I immediately pivoted all of my marketing and just started talking about all the ways that we can make magical things that when you send it to somebody, they will instantly know, oh my God, this came from so-and-so. It has my story in it. It speaks to me. And the energy that I put into it when I made it, and the energy of the person who asked me to make it, it all goes together to that person. They get it. They get that energy. They take it. They show it to somebody else. That person gets that energy. And it's like that butterfly effect of changing people that goes across the world. And I was like, I am going to do that forever. And I focused right back on that. And instead of going out of business with no events, we did maybe 2 tiny weddings last year and tripled our revenue. And I had more orders through my online store between March of last year and the end of the year than I had in the 4 years combined before that. It was insane.
It's amazing. And I was looking at your Instagram account earlier, and I saw these tiny little colorful dots. What are those colorful dots?
So we got a call in January. Weird thing about the woo-woo and the numbers, the day I got the call was my mom's birthday. Same day all my shit burnt in the fire too. Weird. Thanks, Mom.
It's a woo-woo thing.
A lot of things my way. It's interesting. So I get this call from this company that's like, is it possible to make 500,000 seed bombs by March? And I was like, yeah, define possible. At the time, I had 2 part-time assistants. They each worked like maybe 10, 15 hours a week. And I was like, okay, well, I could hire a whole bunch of people and buy a bunch of equipment. Like I know how to figure out an estimate of how long it would take to do this kind of stuff. And so I was like, yeah, if you pay me money up front and I have cash to buy equipment and hire staff and retrofit the space that we have, totally, it's possible. Yeah, let's make it happen. And so they hired us to do it. I guess everyone else was like, y'all, you're crazy. I'm never doing it. Because there's a couple of other manufacturers who make seed bombs and stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure that they were just like.
I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen because I want people to see it, what they look like. I mean, I was looking at it earlier today, and I'm like, what are those? So I couldn't help but to ask, what is it? And it's these little tiny dots.
Yep.
And they're like great color, and you have a lot of stuff going on your Instagram, and this is where your staff was making them.
Yeah, we had a team, mostly temp workers, and I promoted my 2 assistants to management. And I said, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to need a lot of people. So I just started putting the call out on Facebook and letting all of my artist friends say, hey, like, who needs more work right now? I got you. Come work for me. And one of the things I built into my proposal that I was like, I'm going to pay people a living wage. So I started everybody at $15 an hour, because I was like, I want people who are going to feel good about coming to work, and they want to work for someone who cares about them and knows that they probably haven't had enough work and need money to take care of themselves and their families and pay off some debts. I was like, I don't want to hire people at minimum wage. Like, I wouldn't want to make that, and I don't want to put that out in the world either. So I built it into my estimate for the company, that I was like, this is why the price is as much as it is, because I'm going to pay people what they're worth. So we hired, over the course of the job, we had about 70 people, temp workers and people we've added to our staff to make the job happen. And we worked 2 6-hour shifts every single day until the last 2 weeks of the job, where then we worked 3 shifts from 7 a.m. until midnight every single day. And we made between 15 and 20,000 seed bombs a day, every single day, for like an entire month.
And you did it. It's like for the month of March.
Yep, we did it. It was insane. Middle of February to the middle of March. That's all I did all day. I was clocking 35, 40 miles a week walking around the studio, and I never went outside. Like, all I did was just work my butt off, literally.
I feel you're the perfect person to talk about the passion and how that passion can really turn into something that's even bigger. The heart that you give to the community, the people that you hire. I can only imagine what it feels like to be in the same studio with you, and your energy is so up there, and you're so bright and shiny, and it just inspires me so much.
It was so cool. It's always been one of my dreams to be able to have a big team of people, and not just to have a team of people, but to have a team of really diverse people from different backgrounds. And this job gave me that opportunity. I mean, I couldn't keep everybody permanently. Hopefully someday I'll be able to, like, keep a big staff like that on all the time. But it was just so amazing to see so many different people from all walks of life. Like, we had retirees who came out of retirement because they wanted to have something fun to do. And the one woman came to us from a temp agency, and she had been retired for 10 years. And she was like, I just wanted to do something else. And she told me that working for me was the best job she'd ever had. And it was the only time she ever felt like her boss actually cared about her as a person. And I was like, and then we had this transgender high school kid who had never had a job. And I was like, oh, this is totally going to be your first job. You come here and I'll use whatever name you want to be called. And I'm going to make sure everybody else does too. And nobody's misgendering anybody. And we're making sure that it's open and welcoming and safe for everybody. And we had every single race, every single culture, all like working together and picking different music on the Alexa and jamming out and dancing around. And like, we just had so much fun. It was like summer camp. So once the job was over, I was like, it's like summer camp's over. I'm so sad. Like,
you're making me very teary, because I feel that is the whole idea behind entrepreneurship, behind business, right? If we can all rise up to the point where we're not just about transactions, we're actually about speaking to our heart and with our passion that we have for the world. And everything is going to be so much better and easier for everyone else.
Yeah.
And by the way, my birthday is on the 5th. So just so you know, it's a number 5, and number 5 is actually my favorite number too.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I insisted on having you back, because I think the first time that we had connected and you weren't feeling well, and then we had to reschedule it. And I'm like, yes, I want her back. I want her on the show, because you really speaks a lot about the love, about the courage, and also bringing the people, the community in your community together. So you're a great symbol and you're a great inspiration. I'm going to do I salute you, and I'm going to do a stand up, but you can't see it. Do do you have any, I wanted to wrap this up, and I know we're a little over, but I have so much fun talking to you.
Sorry.
Do you have any advice for people who are starting up, or people who find themselves, at a point where they might have at the edge of losing everything? What advice do you have for them?
It's funny, you ever see that movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner in the 80s? If you build it, they will come. And in order to succeed, especially as an artist or as like a creative entrepreneur in general, you have to be your own biggest fan. And if you don't love what you do and you're not excited about telling people why you love what you do, it's going to be really hard for other people to love what you do too. So I think a lot of artists have a hard time feeling confident about their own art and putting it out into the world. And if you want to be successful financially as an artist, that is the first thing you really need to do a lot of work on. The second thing I would say is something I learned from one of my amazing business coaches, Nicole Overcamp from Powerhouse Money Coaching. She consistently was on me saying done is better than perfect, because a lot of creatives feel like whatever they're working on is never going to be as good as it would be otherwise, and as good as it could be in their head. And so because they can't make it perfect, they don't put it out there at all. And so she was always pushing me to just put it out there and see what happens. And it allowed me the freedom to make a lot of things happen that might not have been perfect, but it was still worth putting them out there so that they could be out in the world. And a lot of things that I thought weren't going to be successful because they weren't perfect enough ended up being really excellent out in the world. So those are for sure some good tips. And just that thing that keeps you up at night, that thing that you lay awake thinking about, that's your jam. Do that. Do it. Even if you get 5 minutes a week to do it. Yeah. Make a little spot to do that in your house, or in somebody else's office. Say, hey, you got a corner where I could set up a table and like do something. Just do a little bit. And I mean, it's similar to when I first started performing poetry for people. I was 12 years old. I was terrified. I was so dorky. I don't know. Like I had glasses and braces and like 2 short pants and like all the nerd symbolism of 7th grade. I had very few friends, and I was really struggling a lot with being who I am, who I was, being okay with being a weirdo, because middle school was not cool to be a weirdo, but I was very and my mom made me go to poetry reading, this open mic, and she's like, you have to go and read these poems you wrote. These are great. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so I go to the thing and I go to like read my poem. So we'll pretend this is like, I mean, like journals like shaking like this. I couldn't read it without covering my whole face and everything. But I read the poem in front of this whole group of adults, and then everybody started clapping. And that rush that I got from being proved wrong, that I thought I wasn't worth it, is unbelievable. I mean, like I'm so hooked on the claps, in general, about the claps from life. So, you would really be surprised at how often people are willing to clap for you in whatever you do in your life. You just got to put it out there. You got to give them something to clap for, and they will. And if they don't, then unfriend.
I love that. I love it. That's right. Just unfriend them. If they don't clap for you, then unfriend them.
Yes. Bye, Felicia.
I'm clapping for you because you show up for yourself, and I love that. I love that courage that you have and the passion. And when I hear you talk, I really hear that passion. And I love how you share that. And do is better than being perfect. So just do. And too bad that Nike already took that slogan. Just do it. But yeah. Just do it. Don't be perfect.
Do the work. You just got to do the work. Do it and put it out there and see what happens.
Exactly.
All failures are just an excuse to learn something new and figure out if it didn't work that way, then it doesn't work that way and try something else.
Exactly. The only outcome that we can get is by putting it out there and just see what happens. Yay! Well, cheers, Janna. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I had a great time. I love your personality. I keep following you. I'm your stalker on Facebook. So, like all these stuff that you put on Facebook, I'm like stalking you. So, those of you who want to follow Janna, and I highly recommend to follow Janna, she's at Papercraft Miracle. And can you let us know where to find you?
Sure. So our website is papercraftmiracles.com. If you Google Papercraft Miracles, it's pretty easy. We'll find out all the places that we're at. I also have a podcast that's called Reach the Stars Podcast, and you can find that right on our website, papercraftmiracles.com/Reach the Stars Podcast. It's on YouTube, and it's also on all major podcast platforms. And I hope that Michelle will be my guest on my show one of these days. So
I would love to.
Come tell your story.
Yay! All right. Thank you so much, Janna. I'm going to let you go to the background. And thank you everyone for watching this show. And again, this is a live coffee talk show. I air every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Pacific time. And every week you can count on me to bring up a guest who can share their love story, their courage story, and how they bring the community all together. So join me again next week at 8 o'clock Pacific time at Live Coffee Talk. I will see you all next week. Bye.